UTC Black Time, 7 hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. With the news at this time, I am Deanna Jordan. A very good morning to you. To begin the news, here is a look at the lead stories. The two teenagers jointly charged yesterday in relation to the alleged murder committed on Dr. Colin Roach on November 2, 2021, have been remanded. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says Region 3 has the highest number of COVID infection cases and the mining town of Linden is a growing concern. A 102-year-old female from Region 4, Demerara Mahaica, is among 6 persons who succumbed to COVID-19 within the last 34 hours. Providence East Bank Demerara has been identified to be the home of a Hyatt-branded 4-star hotel in Guyana. Regionally, the Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority has received new industry standards from the Barbados National Standards Institution to support the local cannabis industry. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now the news in detail. 2 persons were jointly charged yesterday in relation to the alleged murder committed on Dr. Colin Roach on November 2, 2021, and they have been remanded. Police say the duo, 18-year-old Lenric Bias and 19-year-old Hilton Oliver Jr. Franklin, were charged jointly for the offense of murder in the course or furtherance of a robbery. The accused, Bias and Franklin, appeared at the Georgetown Magistrate Court before Chief Magistrate Anne McLennan, where the indictable charge was read to both of them. They were not required to plead and were both remanded to prison until November 30, 2021 for report. The 2 murder accused, Bias and Franklin, were both arrested by the police on November 5, 2021. Lenric Bias is an unemployed 18-year-old male of Lot 282 Good Intent Village, West Bank, Demerara, and Hilton Franklin is a 19-year-old taxi driver of Lot 27 Best Village, West Coast, Demerara. The Health Ministry says Region 3, Essequibo Islands, West Demerara, has the highest number of COVID cases, while Linden in Region 10 is a growing concern. The Health Minister, Dr. Frank Anthony, says there is an overall decline in positive cases, but not so for the West Demerara region, which now has more cases than Region 4, Demerara Mahaica.
When we look at the regional distribution of these cases, we now see that Region 3 is the area that has the highest amount of cases. So we now have 1,100 cases in Region 3. And there's been that drop in Region 4, so we are below 1,000 in Region 4. We are now at 934 cases in Region 4.
The health minister says most areas in Region 3 are infected with high number cases, with Tushin leading. Dr. Anthony says the health ministry is especially concerned about the growing numbers in Linden, which has the lowest number of vaccinated persons of all the 10 regions.
But I think where we're very much concerned would be in Wisma, where we have now 72 cases that are active and 33 in Amelia's ward and 19 in Mackenzie. But why we have to be very concerned here is because most of the population in Linden and in Region 10 as a whole, the vaccination uptake there has been quite low. So if you have cases, those cases can easily spread to others, and therefore you would see more people getting infected.
Minister Anthony urges that persons don't become complacent but continue to observe the COVID-19 protocols and get vaccinated to further reduce the numbers. A 102-year-old female from Region 4, Demerara, Mahaica, is among 6 persons who succumbed to COVID-19 within the last 34 hours. The death toll is now 951. The Health Ministry says 48 new cases of the virus were also recorded during the same period. There are 17 persons severely sick in the COVID-19 ICU and 47 others hospitalized. The ministry says the number of persons told to isolate themselves at home decreased to 2,284. The Health Ministry says 253,938 adults are fully vaccinated and 387,505 are partially vaccinated. For children ages 12 to 17 years old, 19,028 are fully vaccinated and 27,954 partially vaccinated. A Hyatt-branded hotel is to be built in Guyana at Providence on the east bank of Demerara. A statement by the proprietor said the $32 million edifice will be a 4-star hotel with 125 rooms targeting middle and upper class clienteles. Amenities include different guest rooms options, disability outfitted rooms, restaurant and bar, meeting rooms, social lounge, fitness center, pools, internet and communication links, room service, guest laundry, spacious and parking spaces. The project is owned and developed by SIR Investments Guyana Inc., a subsidiary of Universal Investments Limited, a company registered in Trinidad and Tobago. The Hyatt-branded hotel is expected to complete construction and open for business in 36 months from the start of construction. During the construction phase, some 300 persons are to be employed, and 80 permanent jobs and several part-time jobs will be available upon opening. The sod turning will be done today at the Providence location. And now in regional news. The Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority, BMCLA, has received new industry standards from the Barbados National Standards Institution, BNSI, to support the local cannabis industry with the aim to ensure that the medicinal cannabis industry is held to the highest ethical standards. According to Barbados Today, the strategic partnership between BNSI's standards, test methods, certification, technical regulation support and training, and the BMCLA's regulatory oversight of the cannabis industry allows both entities to establish optimal qualities for medicinal cannabis products. The first deliverable was the testing parameters for raw cannabis material, which was developed by the BNSI in collaboration with the BMCLA and technical experts. Raw cannabis material is the primary and fundamental ingredient in the production of medicinal cannabis products. The other deliverable from BNSI to the BMCLA was a standard for packaging and labeling of medicinal cannabis products. In the official handover, BMCLA's Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Chantal Monroe-Knight, says that the BMCLA have worked with BNSI to develop testing parameters as well as standards for packaging and labeling. He says the standards represent an important plank in an effort to ensure high-quality standards in the industry, building out a culture that fosters consumer trust and confidence that products produced locally and abroad are safe and efficacious. Leon Riley is now a free man after the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal overruled his rape conviction. Observer Antigua News reports that in 2019, High Court Judge Keith Thom sentenced the man to 15 years behind bars after a jury found him guilty of rape and serious indecency. The incident reportedly occurred in April 2012 in the vicinity of Pensioners Beach, where he allegedly took a 15-year-old girl and forced himself on her. On Monday, the appellate court scrapped the conviction and sentence on the grounds that the prosecution relied heavily on testimonies of witnesses, which the victim reportedly told of the offense at the first opportunity, the common law rule of recent complaint. Section 28 of the Sexual Offences Act No. 9 of 1995 abolished the common law rules relating to evidence of recent complaints in sexual offense cases. As a result, the Court of Appeal ordered a retrial. Riley was represented by Lawrence Daniels and Wendell Robinson. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has issued a Level 4 travel health notice for the Cayman Islands. The CDC says that the Level 4 notice was due to COVID-19, indicating a very high level of COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands. A Loop News report says the CDC advised that if persons must travel to the Cayman Islands, they must ensure they are fully vaccinated before travel. The CDC noted that because of the current situation in the Cayman Islands, even fully vaccinated travelers may be at risk of getting and spreading COVID-19 variants. CDC advises that travelers should follow recommendations or requirements in the Cayman Islands, including wearing a mask and staying 6 feet apart from others. And now for the international news, the latest coming from the BBC World Service.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The United Nations has warned countries at the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow that every tiny rise in global temperature will have a devastating effect. The UN has now released the first draft of a potential agreement urging countries to improve their commitments to cutting carbon emissions. Here's our environment analyst, Roger Harrabin.
This is where negotiations begin in earnest. Governments can now see the UN's interpretation of the mood of the talks in Glasgow. From now until the weekend, vulnerable nations will be striving to strengthen this text, and nations endowed with fossil fuels will be fighting to weaken it. The document clearly accepts that governments are not doing enough to limit emissions, and that every fraction of a degree increase in global temperature makes things even worse. To that end, the paper proposes that nations over the coming year should ratchet up their emissions-cutting targets in what they accept is this crucial decade.
Poland says migrants have made many attempts overnight to break through the border from Belarus as the crisis on the frontier continues. Thousands of people, mainly from the Middle East, Africa and Afghanistan, have massed on the Belarusian side of the frontier. Poland and neighbouring Lithuania accused the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, of deliberately creating a border crisis for the EU. Dovile Shakaliene is a Lithuanian MP and member of her country's National Security Committee.
Airport data from airlines, and also the intel data when we see military moving the migrants, transporting them. And over 4,000 migrants during this hybrid attack have already entered Lithuania during summer. All of them tell the same story, that Belarusian law enforcement officers or military helped them to get to the border. Some of them were transported, and all by all, this is coordinated by Belarusian regime.
The campaign group Human Rights Watch says a government blockade on Ethiopia's Tigray region is preventing women who've been raped during the conflict from getting the medical care they desperately need. Emmanuel Igunza has more details.
The Human Rights Watch report has accused the warring parties of widespread sexual violence and deliberately targeting healthcare facilities. Human Rights Watch says many sexual violence survivors need their pregnancies terminated or treatment for HIV and hepatitis B, along with surgery for broken bones, stab wounds and traumatic fistulas. Separately, Amnesty International accused the Tigray People's Liberation Front fighters of gang-raping women at gunpoint in the Amhara region.
A high-level Taliban delegation is in Pakistan, the first such visit by the new Kabul government since seizing control of Afghanistan in August. A spokesman says talks will focus on trade and transit, both of goods and people. BBC News. The finance minister from the collapsed Afghan government has said it was brought down by rampant corruption at a very high level. Halib Payenda told the BBC that by the time the US forces left, top generals were pocketing the funding for thousands of registered troops who in practice didn't exist. Some military leaders took payments from the Taliban to give up territory without a fight. The Dalai Lama has accused Chinese leaders of exerting too much control over the country's ethnic minorities. He said they didn't understand that China has a number of unique cultures in places such as Tibet and Xinjiang. Tibetan Buddhism's spiritual leader said there was too much emphasis on Han people, China's dominant ethnic group, from which virtually all top leaders are drawn. Shares in the Chinese property developer Fantasia have plunged after the company said it might not be able to meet some of its financial obligations. Fantasia's shares were suspended for a month when it failed to repay a bond on maturity. They fell by almost 50% when trading resumed today. The sector has been rattled by the troubles of China's cash-strapped property giant Evergrande. The film director Peter Jackson, who made the Lord of the Rings trilogy, is to sell his Oscar-winning Weta Digital special effects business to an American software firm that wants to use it to develop virtual reality programs. Shai McKeel has more details.
Renowned for creating characters like Gollum in Lord of the Rings and lifelike hair and fur technologies, Weta said the deal will make its capabilities available to creators around the world. Unity Software, based in San Francisco, says the $1.6 billion acquisition will help it shape the future of the metaverse, an immersive 3D version of the internet. The company says it will use Weta's expertise to help it roll out tools for artists and developers in the film and gaming industries.
That's the latest. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now to end the news, a recap of the leads. The two teenagers jointly charged yesterday in relation to the alleged murder committed on Dr. Colin Roach on November 2, 2021, have been remanded. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says Region 3 has the highest number of COVID infection cases and the mining town of Linden is a growing concern. A 102-year-old female from Region 4, Demerara, Mahaica, is among 6 persons who succumbed to COVID in the last 34 hours. Providence East Bank, Demerara, has been identified to be the home of a Hyatt-branded 4-star hotel in Guyana. And in regional news, the Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority has received new industry standards from the Barbados National Standards Institution to support the local cannabis industry. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.